Hey everybody, Patty Ann here. Hang on just a second. So Sam or Sam, wrote to me and asked me a question about using bling or rhinestones along with embroidery. And can we combine those two things with Embrilliance software and our Silhouette software? Well, it took me a long time to figure this out, and maybe there's a much easier way than this, but Sam, this is what I found out so far. Here was one of my examples that didn't work. Here's another one that didn't work. So I kept trying. I kept embroidering more of the letter B, just trying the letter B. Finally, I got one that worked perfectly. I'm going to show you how. Let's look at my software. Okay, I started out in Silhouette software thinking that's where I should start, begin designing, and then send it to my Embrilliance software. But instead, at the very end, I discovered, here were some of my tests, that the best way to do it was to do something in my Embrilliance software first. So let's hop over to Embrilliance. And here's one of the ones that was a disaster, and I can tell you why. I forgot to resize it, and Sam, you may be forgetting to resize it, but I think there's might be even something more than that. It's another one that almost was going to work, but what I did was this. I came into the software, let's open a new page. Came into the software here, and now, she has Stitch Artist Level 1, so she can do this. So I'm going to come here to the Create, and I'm going to go right here to where the TT for True Type Fonts is. Click on that. It'll take a moment to open. And I'm going to go to a font called Freshman, because I think that's similar to what she was wanting. And since that's what I've used last, there it is. So I just typed in the letter B and said OK. And then I went ahead and resized it. Whoopsie, not like that. Undo. I got to go back to this, to my select tool, and now I can resize it to whatever size I'd actually like it to be. Okay, there we go. And the next thing I did was I knew I wanted this to be satin stitches. So once I got it to the size I wanted, and I can tell what size it is by looking up here, I've changed mine to millimeters here because I think it's a little bit easier to work back and forth between these, and it's a little bit more exact than using inches. So don't worry if you know what millimeters are, just change it to millimeters. And let's see, I'll make this like, well, I'll just leave it where it is right there. So that doesn't matter right now. I'm just going to leave it like it is. And now I'm going to come to my Create, and I'm going to put a satin border around it. Now the satin border that I have has a width of 3.5 millimeters. Of course, you can make yours more, larger if you'd like, or smaller. But I made mine to 3.5. Now you're going to have to do a test. Make something small, small, so you don't use too much of your materials. But anyway, there's that. And of course I can change this to a prettier color. I'll change it to something nicer. Let's see, how about this blue? No, let's change it to something else since I used blue recently. I'll change it to purple. Okay, so there it is. It's a pretty purple color. Now, that's fine, and I'm going to write down or remember those measurements. Right here, I can't see them, but if I click up here on the Create, it again shows me the measurements, which I should write down right now on a piece of paper. So the width is 45.75, and the height is 58.83, because I'm going to need that over in Silhouette. So this is perfect. This is exactly what I want. And now I'm going to go to Utility, Save Image, and I'm going to save this as a transparent PNG image and say OK. Now I'm going to name it, I'll just name it B Purple. Okay, and notice right here, save as file type as a PNG. So I'm going to save. Excuse that, that's my sister calling. So I'll say save. Now I'm going to go into Silhouette, And I'll open up a new page, and I'm going to open up that purple bee. Okay, so there it is. Now look how small it came in, very small. It's 32 millimeters wide instead of the 45. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck or unclick this lock so I can manipulate them separately. I'm going to make the width, remember I wrote it down, it's 45.75 and hit enter. And I'm going to make the height 58.83. And I know that again because I wrote it down from my Embrilliance software. So there's what we want right there, kind of. The next thing I'm going to do, and let's scroll in. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trace this. So let's come over to the butterfly on the right that looks like, well, to me it looks like a butterfly. It's the trace tool. Select the trace area and trace. And notice it's not a very good trace, so I'm going to up the threshold until it's really nicely traced and say trace, just like that. And now I can move the purple bit out of the way. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I need to go ahead and just get this inner one. So in order to be able to grab just that, I need to right click and say release the compound path. So then I'm just able to get this one. What I'm going to do before I do anything else with this one, I'm going to hold down my Alt key and drag one over so I still have one right here, the outer edge of it. Then I'm going to take this one right here and I'm going to come over to the offset panel and I'm going to do an internal offset, okay, to make it smaller. And I believe I decided that the 3 millimeters for this size, now this is where you're going to have to do your own testing and your own stitch tests. But for me, this one worked, so I left it like that. So now I'm going to get rid of the middle one, okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on this inner one, and that's where I'm going to add my rhinestones. So I'm going to come down here to the rhinestone tool and click here. And there are my rhinestones. And I can color them in if I want to so we can see them better. And maybe not that dark. Let's see, make them lighter. Like that. So the reason why I saved this is I want to bring this over here because this shows the, when I have the satin stitch over there, it's going to go from the top line to the bottom one or the inner one. And I want to make sure that my rhinestones don't go outside of that. So that's perfect. Except, look at these circles right here that need to be cut out. So again, I'm going to scroll in for you. And the best thing that I could see to do was this. I just went ahead and drew around these. Okay, can't do it yet. You know why? We need to release the rhinestones first. So I'm going to come over here, click on the rhinestones. If the rhinestone panel doesn't open, come down here and reopen it and say release rhinestones. When I check on that, it's going to get rid of it's going to put a box around every rhinestone. Perfect, just like that. Hopefully you can see them. And now, again, if I scroll in, you can see I need these rhinestones out of this area right here because that's where my satin stitch is going to be. So I can just drag across these rhinestones right there and hit delete on my keyboard, and that got rid of them. But it also got rid of my line, and I didn't want to do that. So I can get rid of these one by one if I want, and hit delete, and then get rid of this next row. I'm holding down my shift key so I can select more than one actually, and that helps a lot. And delete. So that's perfect. Now let's double check again. Let's bring in, actually wait, we got to finish the other one. So come on down here, and let's get rid of these. Click on one. Hold down your shift and just start clicking on all the ones that you want to get rid of. When they're selected, a box goes around them. Any of these that hit that line need to be gone or deleted. Okay, so now let's scroll out. Now remember, I saved this thing over here. And once again, we could bring it over here and make sure, yeah, they'll fit perfectly inside there. But even better than that, we can bring over our original here and see just how that's going to go, just like that. So then I'm going to show you just very quickly, because some people in yesterday's Patreon class, when we were talking about rhinestones, didn't understand about how you rub them in. So I'm just going to show you a couple little snippets of a video now to see how to do this. Before I show that, I did want to show how to get to millimeters in Silhouette Studio if you're not familiar with that. So if you look right up here, it shows millimeters, right? But if yours shows inches, all you have to do is come up here to Edit, Preferences, and right here in the General Preferences area, Unit of Measurement, right now it's millimeters. I could change it back to inches if I want to and say Apply, but I'm going to leave mine to millimeters for right now. Say Apply, OK, and there it is. This video just shows me cutting flock, the sticky flock. As you can see, I did a lot of tests on the right side, so I made sure I knew exactly what I wanted for the circles to just cut out, but for the backing to be there. So I always test everything, and I always recommend you do as well. This video just shows me stitching out with my embroidery machine, the satin stitches. This is one of the ones that did not work, but you get the idea. And this last video, I just show how you use the brush to brush the rhinestones in. I have my sticky flock stuck down onto a cookie sheet, and I'm just dumping a bunch of rhinestones up on top, many more than I would need. And I'll just use that little brush to start brushing them in gently. I like to go around in circles, and you can see that they're starting to be actually put right into those holes, since they're the exact size that I needed for this design. And if ever you miss one, you don't have to pick them up manually with your fingers. You can just bring a little group back in and twirl it around or brush it around in the circle, and you'll get them all into place. After they're all into place, you're going to move the excess rhinestones out of the way. You can put them back in the container for later use. Also, don't forget that your template here that you cut out of the sticky flock you can use it over and over and over again, as well as the transfer paper that I'm going to show you in just a minute. Do be careful that you don't try to use any kind of transfer paper other than the stuff that comes for rhinestones. The transfer paper on HTV is probably not sticky enough, and other kind of transfer paper may just melt all over your project. So right now I'm getting out the transfer paper. I'm going to cut a little piece. Well, actually, I used a big piece to begin with, which was a mistake. You want to be careful when you put it down that you don't move it. You put it down with maybe a little valley in the center, like a little hump, because you'll see I moved mine a little bit, and a couple of the rhinestones jumped out of place of where I needed them to be. So I'm kind of going to push them back. See those on the left-hand side by my left hand? I'm going to push those back into place with my fingernail right through that wrap. But if I was more careful when I put down the transfer paper, that would not have happened. So after that's done, the next thing that comes up, you'll peel that up off of the sticky flock, and all of the rhinestones will be attached to the transfer paper. If any are not, before you pull it all the way off, push it back down and push into that rhinestone so that it sticks. You see that one that didn't stick? And I just pushed it back down, and now it's stuck. And I'll take that transfer tape right off of there. I shouldn't have such a big piece because it's really unwieldy, so I am going to cut that now. Okay, next up, I'm going to go ahead and lay this down on the backing from the transfer paper so it stays nice and neat. I'm going to bring in my piece of fabric onto which I have already done the satin stitch. Now this is one of my mistakes, one that didn't work well. Notice there's no inner part of the bee, so that wasn't right, but it'll still give you the idea of what you do next. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this on top of there and then just iron it into place. I can tell you the time and the temperature for rhinestones here. But of course, for my little iron that I'm using, I'm just put it on high, and I just did it for 15 seconds or so, counting in my head, and then I lifted it up to see if it had worked. Okay, and this portion of the video just shows me ironing the rhinestones into place. I don't think I mentioned, but I almost always use 10SS size. I believe SS stands for stone size. And I really like using those. Those of you who are in Patreon, if you don't know that much about rhinestones, we did a whole lesson on them yesterday. I found lots of neat places where you can get single line fonts that you can use for your rhinestones if you enjoy doing that. So I'm just pressing this into place, as I said, and you can do it with a regular heat press if you want. You can do it with a much bigger easy press. Even an iron would work. So I hope if you like my videos, you give me a thumbs up. And by the way, if you want to try this and you don't have Embrilliance Stitch Artist Level 1 and you want to get it, I have a link for it for you down below. And I really, really appreciate it when you use my links. And I also have tons of classes, even step-by-step classes. I think there's 6 of them that go sequentially. Be sure to look for those. Just look in my playlist under Embrilliance and you'll find tons of them. So again, thanks for joining me. Love you guys. Bye for now.